This Guitar Interactive magazine feature is brought to you by PRS Guitars.
So, Mr. Myles Kennedy, it's always a pleasure to chat with you, but particularly a pleasure when you've got brand new music, and this one is one hell of a record. Just talk me through it, The Art of Letting Go. When did this process to put this one together begin?
I think it started about January of 2023 is when the writing started. So I allowed myself about 5 or 6 months to write the tunes, and that was when the majority of the tracks were written. There were a handful, like 2 songs that were started, and maybe one was completed prior to that. I think the song called "Eternal Lullaby" I wrote back in 2018, and then "Miss You When You're Gone" I started that one back around 2018 or so. But other than that, everything is fresh out of the oven.
Absolutely, and one of these ones where, I try and avoid going for the meaning of the title, but I just kind of feel like The Art of Letting Go, like that's something that I can't not ask you a little bit about, because it's a pretty heavy thing. I think especially following your career so much and all the different sort of ups and downs that you've had, mainly ups, of course. I feel as if, that's got to have a real particularly personal meaning to you. Am I right in thinking that? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just a fair assessment of where I'm at this point in my life. I've been on the planet long enough to have learned some things about myself, things that I needed to work on. Mm-hmm. And I think first and foremost was learning the art of letting go. Mm-hmm. I just was, allowing myself to be a little too reactive, and I wasn't really rolling with the punches, as they say, at certain points with certain things. And I just like, you know what, man, screw it. Like, it's just, you take each day as it comes, you learn to be present, and not be reactive. And it's really had an incredible, it's been incredibly good to say the least. I started getting into this stuff about 6 or 7 years ago and working on it. So I just do a lot of reading. I'm a avid meditator, and just trying to stay very mindful as much as I can, and that's really helped me in my evolution. And I feel like it's also helped me creatively. Mm-hmm. I've learned to kind of get out of my own way, and so yeah, it was time to make a record called The Art of Letting Go.
Absolutely. For someone starting that process, because these days, right, there's so many of us that are just sort of bombarded by, you've got your phone on you all the time. It's got all the apps. It's got social media. It's that classic sort of Roger Waters album title, "I'm Used to Death." Everyone's a little like that, like they're living their lives that way. Say you did want to make that step of like, look, I'm going to try and detach from all this that's coming at me all the time. I want to be more present. I want to be more mindful. What's the day one thing that you should do?
Oh man, that is a good question. Well, for me, it was learning to disconnect from the dopamine machine, as I like to refer to it, the smartphones, which I don't know if they're actually going to make you very smart. Because for me, I was realizing it was almost, it had addictive qualities, right? So I was, if you follow any of my socials, you notice I don't post that much. In fact, my manager does a lot of my posts for me. So that was a big step, was just kind of stepping out of that entire realm, and then gradually weaning myself off of other things, just like even how much I was watching the news and all of that content. And for me, I think the foundation of it is what I refer to as my practice. It's what I start every day with meditating. I meditate for, like this morning, I got up and meditated for 30 minutes, and it just kind of sets the day. And I think initially, before I knew what meditation was, I thought it was a bunch of hoo, like, what is this nonsense, And then once I really got into it and realized, oh, this is just a way to kind of, really just learn to power down the mind, so you're not always running with these crazy thoughts. And well, I might be able to use that also creatively, because if I can get out of my own way and quiet things down, then I can really allow ideas to come through. And that's been really important for me, to develop that, without a doubt. And it even helps live, because if you're on stage live and it's like, oh, I've got this hard part coming up, and am I going to be able to execute? And you're not present, that you're thinking what's coming up, or you're regretting a mistake you made, 5 bars behind, you're not staying in the moment. And so with this practice, it helps me perform better as well.
I mean, it's incredible to hear that, and actually incredibly reassuring for somebody as talented as yourself, who's done so much, had so much success in music, that it is still something that you challenge with, but it still challenges you, that trying to keep that mindset, because obviously it's something that a lot of people really struggle with, and you know, as you say, getting out of your own way. You know, obviously I want to be talking about the record, but just while we're on this topic, I would like to know, I mean, earlier on in your career, where you were finding your voice, finding your way on the instrument, you know, there can be a lot of not expectations necessarily from people who haven't really heard you yet, but yourself, about how you think you should sound. I'm going to try and shape my voice this way. I'm going to put extra distortion in my voice here. And it ends up being a little bit, I would imagine, a little bit of a mask to kind of hide the true you. Was that anything that you ever sort of came across as you were making that development? And at what stage did you really sort of decide, right, okay, that's if there is a moment where you thought, going forward, this is the real me, I'm taking that mask off?
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. So ultimately, it was about discovering what my essence was as a singer. And it took me a really, really long time, because I think for a few reasons, I started as a guitar player, and to me, singing was just a way to convey my point with songs when I started writing songs. But I didn't start as a singer, so I didn't think about things like style and how that was going to work initially. Right, it took a long time, and I really had to make a lot of mistakes along the way. And what I found, like if I was to go back and listen to records from my catalog, I could pinpoint. It was like on the first Mayfield 4 record, I'd be like, oh, I was listening to a lot of Tom York and a lot of Jeff Buckley. And then I would fast forward to whatever other record. I was listening to this guy a lot. I was listening to this. There was a certain amount of taking your influences, but not integrating enough of yourself into it as well. And so I think until I was probably, pretty deep into it, where it was like, okay, that's who you are. There's your essence. And I don't know if I found that until probably about 2014, really. Wow. It just took a long, and some of it was also technique. And some of it was just like trying to figure out what vocal technique was going to work for me and how to integrate all the fundamentals. And what you brought up, like distortion, like grit, like, you know, there are things I did on the first Alter Bridge record where I would rasp my voice out more. And then I realized, well, is that really who I am as a singer? Are you trying to be more contemporary here? I mean, what do you like as a singer? Who do you like to listen to? Well, as somebody who listens to Ella Fitzgerald all day and Stevie Wonder, they don't rasp their voice out. So it's like, that's more what my ear kind of goes towards. So why don't you try and incorporate something like that into your style? It was just all those questions, but also a big part of it was just stamina. So what can you do vocally? How can you approach your voice to where you can maintain this voice for decades and you're not going to blow it out? Because I started to notice a pattern with certain types of singing that were degrading things for the next performance. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it different tonight. Oh, okay, that works. It's just a lot of just trial and error. You know, it's just discovering, you're learning what works with what the universe gave you. You know,
absolutely. Some
people can do the raspy thing all day, every day, and they sing fine. Then there are those of us who are like, well, that kind of has a detrimental effect, so let's not do that.
That's it. It's got to be your sound. You're the one that's communicating it, and if something's not genuine, it's kind of like the world, the universe telling you that you're going in the wrong direction. Yes. You know, it's a slightly tenuous link on there in terms of like the title and what have you, but one of my favourite tracks off the new record is Behind the Veil. I mean, that one I just can't get enough of. I mean, obviously I'm still new to the album, like well, the guys haven't heard it just yet, you know, and that's your favourites are gonna flow, but right now I'm just absolutely loving that one. Would you be able to talk me through the process of creating that one, crafting it all the way right through to that magnificent solo that you've got going on in there?
Thank you. Well, I appreciate hearing that, because that's my that's my favorite on the
Oh,
record.
great.
That was the one where when I stumbled onto the riff, I was like, okay, this is going to be fun. I can't wait to play this one live. Yeah, I stumbled onto the riff in the back of a tour bus last year. And I remember my guitar tech, Dave, came in. He's like, oh, I really like that. I was like, yeah, cool. Good. All right. We're going to check that one as one to really develop. And the intro and the outro part, those were parts I had sitting around for a little while. You open up your eyes to see the life, that kind of, I don't even know how to, a little bit of expensive chords in there, adding some ninths and whatnot. Like that's my jazz nerdy side coming out. Yeah. But then I bookended the riff with that, and really knowing as I was writing the song, I was like, this is going to be one of those songs that's about that middle section. This is going to be something where you can allow yourself to go off and just have fun playing a guitar solo. And so what's interesting as far as how that solo turned out, we were making the record, and I was having I have this thing called, why do I always forget what this is called? It's my ulnar nerve. I have this nerve that runs from my shoulder through my elbow into my finger. So it gives me grief sometimes, especially
a little bit of numbness.
Yes, exactly. So my pinky and ring finger go numb sometimes. And so I was like, I want to make sure that I've got everything kind of ready to go when we go in the studio in case that rears its ugly head, because I'm playing a lot of guitars. We were tracking this. Cubital tunnel syndrome. That's what it is. Okay. And so anyway, I had the roughs, when we were doing pre-production, and I was playing and I was just jamming along with it. And I would press record and I just jam it. And what you hear on the record was a version that I just, for whatever reason, it just felt like I was in the moment. I was like, it was just an improv sort of thing. It wasn't all planned and thought out. It just felt right. And I listened back to it in my little room there, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to top that. So I'm just going to learn that and play. That's what I'll play on the record. So it was basically just this. I was just having fun jamming, and then realized, okay, don't try and top that one. Just do that. And that's how it came together.
Oh, it's absolutely killer, and I mean, obviously the guys, they really need to hear it. Everyone, that's checking out the interview, of course, they're going to be listening to the album. And that's the best way to take in but we do want to talk about it for sure, just because there's so many great talking points, and how the album ends is another incredible highlight, of course. And this is a pretty interesting one, finding out that I was thinking, is there some like Pink Floyd influences in here? There's all that sort of stuff, but actually finding out that there was so much of a story influence behind it as well. Could you talk a little bit about that? What inspired this track? How the story ends?
How the story ends. Yeah, I was inspired by a film. And my wife, she loves scary movies. She just, if she could have her way, we'd watch scary movies every single night. I'm not that, I like scary movies, but within reason. But she's like, there's this movie called Speak No Evil. It's a Danish film. We should check it out. So we started watching it, and it was just like, it came out, I think, in 2022. They just did a remake of it, but we watched the original. Sure. That's where the song came from lyrically. And it had a theme, it had a message that was really important for me in particular to hear. And that is the idea. You can be civil, you can be polite, but also be aware that sometimes people will take advantage of that, and then you're not really speaking up for yourself, and that's something I'm working on, along with the art of letting go. I'm learning to be, kind of stand up for what I need and what I believe more on a day-to-day basis. And so that's where that came from. There's a line in that song, in the quarry, once again, in the quarry, it's a pivotal point in the movie where these people allow themselves to get put in this really, ultimately, it's kind of the end. Sure. And I don't want to give away the film.
No, for sure.
But my wife and I will still say, if a situation will come up and we'll be like, hey, are you allowing yourself to step into the quarry? It's really
it's become a big part of your life.
Yes.
Are you going to be brave enough to watch the remake, you think?
I just did.
And what's the verdict? As good as the original, or
it's different? It's got a different the ending is not even the same. It's very I feel like it's more palpable because it shows kind of this transformation from someone who's I don't want to say a coward, but
Sure.
someone who allows themselves to be walked over, and then what happens in the end. So I don't want to be the spoiler guy, but the actors were great. It's a good film.
Yeah.
But there's something about that first one that really, it's dark. The first one's so freaking dark. Like,
That's it. A lot of the time that can be, you look at an American movie, you can get dark themes, but always when you end up with a British movie or original British, somehow has a darker theme to it, like just by it's standard. But then when you go to a European movie, that's a whole other level, level of darkness. But anyway, I'm going way off topic, but slightly connected to this because we're talking about outside influences that influence your music. And I remember in an interview a while back, you talked about that famous Bruce Lee quote about be water, which seems to be something that you've really applied really well in your life. How have you fitted in so many different odd shaped musical entities and you make it work? What are some other things that would be surprising for people to learn that have been an influence on your music or in life in general?
Good question. I think it's just an open mind. I think I've always had kind of this ability to try and look at many different angles on things and try and appreciate why do people like this, whatever this thing is here that I'm not understanding. And then I'll dive into it like, oh, okay. And I get it. And it was early on for me that it became that way with music. When I first started playing guitar, I was a total hard rock kid, right? Total like, and then then metal. And then one day I woke up probably in my late teens and I was like, oh, well, there's this other stuff going on. What's this all about? Why do people like this? And then I couldn't satiate this thirst I had to learn about various forms of music. So, I mean, going back to your question, those are more musical things, but I think it's just that ability to have an open mind, and really just not have a narrow view of the world has really been very crucial in my development.
Absolutely. Let's talk about gear on the record because you've had an exciting couple of years adding this PRS signature guitar to your arsenal, which was a long time in the making. I'm assuming that's making an appearance on the record on a few tracks. Can you talk us through the gear, the amps you used, etc.?
Yeah. That's what you hear on this record is the signature guitar. That's it. Yeah, it really worked well, and it really inspired me to write this record. There's something about the sound of the guitar with those narrow field pickups and the that swamp ash body, and that just something about the attack that made me want to do this. And it worked really well in the studio environment. So I had the signature guitar went right into my PRS Paul amp instead of using my Herbert or my VH4. The Pauls, they turned me onto that amp a few years ago, and it's I believe it's EL34s. I believe is that particular version. And so it's got more of that British sound, but yet married with that kind of German thing that the Diesel does. And so and that's it. We didn't. It was really easy once we figured that out. We also used creambacks. We found a 212 cabinet and put creambacks. I was going to use my Diesel cabinet with the creambacks in it, but we couldn't ship it for whatever reason. So we just found a cabinet with the creambacks and it worked great.
Well, I mean, it really feels like from a production perspective as well, like the album really breathes. You feel like tons of dynamics in the vocal and in the playing, and like the stuff that you're talking about there about, speaker choices and, you feel as if those little characteristics can really come out in this production. That's got to have been a deliberate decision, yeah?
Yeah. I think we would sit and talk before we started recording, and and Elvis and I were bringing up records that we liked in the past. And we were talking about those records where, like, even with the vocals, where they were pretty dry and kind of in your face.
Sure.
And everything kind of had its place instead of it being just this sonic assault. And so that was very important. And we've been thinking that way on the last few records we've done together. Even on the last Alter Bridge record, we tried to keep it a little more stripped down, not as much production, not as much fairy dust on everything. But with this record, it's even more so because it's a rock and roll record. And that was important because what it does is it allows those nuances to cut through. You know, if it's not just this wall where the compressor never moves, right? It there's something about having those pits and valleys or peaks and valleys that allow the nuances to have their moment more so than they would if you were just squashing everything. So
Absolutely. And like, it's fantastic to hear that elements of the solos that have that improvised feel, because I think that's, for me as a fan, I love that, where you kind of feel like there's something that, you're going to try and recreate something live or do a whole new different take on it live, but it's nice to think that there was something that just happened there in that moment. And those are the things that you go back to year after year and go, oh, I hear this other little element or that little pick scrape or that thing that you can, like, as a geek, I'll
right.
obsess over. Some of the things that I'm noticing, though, in terms of like your techniques, you've always been a great player, but you're the type of player that always adds new bits to their arsenal, seems to always be working on new bits of playing. Am I hearing little bits of like hybrid picking going on this record and the solos? Is that something that you're doing now?
I don't even know what hybrid picking is. But maybe?
I just feel as if I can hear the combination of the pick, but also some fingers.
Oh yeah. I've been kind of messing with that off and on since I had a buddy who was a country player a long time ago, and would kind of, he taught me like banjo rolls and things like, but I do it with a pick and then my ring and pinky. I think the thing I'm working on more than anything, continue to try and develop, is just, I think every guitar player, we all pretty much say the same, our picking technique, right? We all want to have, when I first heard Cliffs of Dover, I was like, well, whatever that guy's doing, that's what I want to do. So I'm still, 35 years later, still trying to, get that kind of Eric Johnson approach with the fast stuff. I like technique playing. I like flurries of notes. But there's something about the keeping it more pentatonic and blues based that has always appealed to my ear more so than being more modal, and doing, a run down the Phrygian mode, and I, that's cool. And it's got a thing, but I'm definitely a fan of, fast pentatonic runs.
Yeah, well, nothing you put in there ever sounds out of place, and we all know that can sometimes happen for some players. We won't name any names, but you can kind of feel as if some things are just squeezed in there, and everything you do definitely feels like it serves the song. Just reflecting a bit on success, Myles, because you've had such success critically and financially and creatively and all that sort of stuff. What does success mean to you now on the other side of it in comparison to when you were striving for success? Is your perception of it different?
I think to some degree it is interesting once you've checked a lot of the boxes that you never thought would be checked. And so I don't take any of that for granted. I'm very, very grateful. I gratitude is the attitude in my house. But I do, once you check the boxes, then suddenly you're like, well, now what? What mountain do you want to try and climb now? And that's where I'll be totally candid. That's what I'm kind of struggling with at this point in life. Because I don't see anything on the horizon that interests me enough to chase that down. So it's a matter of just continuing to fly at the altitude that I've been hoisted up to by just a lot of luck and hard work and a fan base that's amazing. And not, so your goal then is to try not to let them down so you can continue to fly at that altitude. I don't want to fly any higher. There's some people are like, well, do you want to get bigger and play the Enormo Dome everywhere in the world? And I'm like, no, I don't. This is the perfect existence because I can still go to the grocery store. No one knows who I am and where I live. It's great. I have anonymity. I'm comfortable. I can pay the bills and I can make the music I want to make. So I think moving forward, the goal really is just to see if I can continue this as long as possible, because ultimately the thing I love more than anything is creating.
Absolutely.
So if I have an outlet to create, it's that's what it's all about, man. It's creating.
Well, I would be remiss not to ask you about the sort of breaking news yesterday on Tom Cairns's Instagram post, and then of course Slash chimed in, and I just want to make sure I get his quote correct. Where have I put it? So he said, "The three of us are starting the initial framework, then Frank, then Myles, recording in November." What can you tell us, Myles?
It's official. We're making a polka record. I can't wait. No, we've been, I'm such a smart ass. When we were touring earlier this year, started chipping away on some ideas, and really excited about them. Really am. The question for me is, how do I fit into the equation? So we talked, and they decided, well, we'll go ahead and do the instruments in November, and then I'll circle back around and finish the vocals when I can. Obviously, I'm getting ready to tour for the next. I'll be in the studio when they're in the studio. I'll be on the road when they're in the studio.
Yep.
And then I'll be on the road again first half of next year. So I just need to figure out how to, find time in the window. But with that said, I'll be, I've been hearing every day. I get the kind of the snapshot of what they did, and so that keeps me abreast of what's happening, so I can work on my parts.
Absolutely.
That's the beauty of technology, right? There's a time when you'd have to ship something, but now I'll just get a text from Slash, and he'll be like, "Hey man, I uploaded this thing. Check it out."
Might just need to do an AI, Myles.
I think that's a great idea. I would love that.
Is there any space for AI in your world? From a creative perspective, I mean, there must be some positive aspects to it. I mean, have you explored any of that avenue?
You know what? I'm really into this app called Perplexity. It's amazing. So any question I have, I just ask it, and I get this nice summary. It's just, I don't have to go digging around on Google or whatever. Yeah, I'm all for the whole AI revolution. Now, am I using it as far as creatively? I'm hesitant there. My fear is, as a creative, as somebody who loves to create, it's a genuine fear, is that it's going to get to the point where artists are going to just say, write me a song in the style of what people know me for. And then they're not going to put in the time. And then that concerns me, because then for those of us who are purists, people are, if you come out with a song that's good, they'll just say, oh, he just used AI, and that's what scares me is this, like, for those of us who are bullheaded and just want to be purists and old school about creating, that it could take away, it could just be one of those things where it gets discounted. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
For sure. Well, look, just before I let you go, because I know you're a busy man, Myles, but got a fantastic tour coming up. You're coming back to the UK. You got some tremendous support on here as well, though, with Devin Townsend.
Yes.
You've got Cardinal Black. Talk to us a little bit about Devin and also Chris Buck, because I know that you've not chosen these guys just out of the blue to support you.
No, it's because I'm a massive fan, and I'm going to probably irritate both of them, because I'm always going to be hanging around. Hey man, remember that time when you played that solo? I'll be like Chris Farley when he interviews Paul McCartney on Saturday Night Live. I think Devin is brilliant. The Lightwork record is one of my favorite records in the last 5 years. I could just talk forever about that particular body of work. And then Chris is, I remember the first time hearing Chris, Slash brought him up when he was, I think, still a teenager. And I was just like, well, there you go. His sense of phrasing is mind blowing. He's one of the best guitar players in the world. And he's a sweetheart. And same with Devin. He's such a nice guy. So I like surrounding myself with people who are uber talented and good people to boot, because that's the way to be.
For sure. Final question, and I'll let you go, Myles. You're always going to be tied in some small way to Led Zeppelin, Like, what's something surprising about that interaction with them that people maybe wouldn't know? Because it kind of feels as if it's like one of these ones that this big what might have been. But is there an element to it that people would be surprised to know about that interaction?
I don't know. It was pretty, low key in a lot of ways. To me, it just felt like four guys jamming. There was a kind of almost and maybe this was naive of me to think this and say this now, but there was almost an innocence. It was just like, it's just enjoying music. And they just wanted to play these great songs they'd written. And I was the lucky schmuck who got pulled in to sing for a few days, and that's the way I will always remember it, is just that, keeping it kind of pure. It was great. It was,
but nothing was recorded. No,
not officially. that I know of, as far as like maybe someone had a 2-track going, or maybe somebody had a laptop or something, but it was nothing where we knew there was an engineer and, okay, the red light's on, take one. There was nothing like that.
It would be amazing if we got to hear some of that down the line. Look, Myles, absolute pleasure. I could chat to you all night. You're such a talented and interesting guy, but I'll be looking forward to seeing you when you play London later in the year. So I'll see you then.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, Jonathan. This is a lot of fun.
Good to speak to you. See you next time.
All right. Take care.
Bye.